The baby smiled, and every old man in that room went pale. Nicole Richardson held her 8-month-old son against her chest as the council chamber filled with the sound of a cane striking mahogany. 3 times. The signal that meant a CO had to answer for his blood. Nicole was 29, black, beautiful, slender. A head nurse at Changi Hospital in Seoul, the kind of woman who ran 2 intensive care wings without raising her voice. For 2 years she had loved Seo Min-yi in silence. The silent heir. The man with the black Korean tiger tattooed up the right side of his neck, the man who had never once introduced her to the room she was now standing in. Old Han spoke first. Soft, almost kind. "Do you really want to stain the Seo bloodline with that blood?" Min-yi's jaw locked. The whole chamber waited, and then he pointed at his own son and he shouted it. "No blood of mine is that dark." The baby flinched at his father's voice. Then, because babies don't understand cruelty yet, Kim-woo laughed. A wide, open laugh. And there, on a brown-gold little face, 2 dimples appeared. Asymmetrical, the right one slightly deeper. The exact dimples carried by every Seo patriarch for 4 generations. Old Han closed his eyes. Nicole did not cry. She rose, the child still in her arms, and she looked Min-yi in the eye. "He is not your blood," she said. "He is only mine." And then she walked out of the only room he had ever told her she could never enter. What she did in the 4 years that followed. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Nicole pressed her palm flat against the cold glass of the Gangnam penthouse window and counted the lights of Seoul until her breathing slowed. 23 floors below, the city moved without her. Above her, the sky had no stars. She had learned in 2 years of living inside this apartment that the sky over Gangnam never gave you stars. It gave you weather and silence and the reflection of your own face on the glass. Her hand drifted from the window to her belly. 8 months. The baby kicked once, soft, polite, as if asking permission. "Easy," she whispered. "Easy now." Behind her the lock turned. She did not move. She knew the sound of his key the way other women knew the sound of their husbands' cars. 3 little clicks, then the soft pull of the heavy door. Then the pause. He always paused in the entryway before he stepped onto the floor, as if he were checking whether he had earned the right to walk into a room where she was standing. "Nicole." Min-yi's voice carried across the long, open space. Low, careful. He spoke her name like it was a coin he had been saving in his pocket. She turned. He was still in his charcoal coat, the collar dusted with the November rain that had been falling since noon. The tigers on his neck, the black minwa ink crawling up from his collarbone toward the angle of his jaw, were half hidden by the lift of his collar. Only the tip of the tail showed. He looked tired. He always looked tired now. "You're late," she said. "I know." He set a small paper bag on the marble counter. Rice cakes, still warm. He had stopped at the old woman's stall on the corner again. He thought she did not notice these things. She noticed every one of them. She watched him peel off the coat. Underneath, white Egyptian cotton, 2 buttons open. The tiger crawled the length of his throat now, ink dark against pale skin. The gold of his white gold watch flashed once on his left wrist as he laid the coat across the chair. He moved through the apartment like a man crossing a river he was not allowed to swim in. "Eat something," she said. "I will." He came to her. He always came to her last, after the coat, after the watch, after the small ritual that gave her time to compose herself. He stood behind her. He placed one hand on her belly, palm spread wide, fingers careful, as if her body were made of paper. "He moved," she said. 3 kicks, the same as last night. "You count." "I count." She closed her eyes for a moment. His hand was warm, the rest of him was not. The baby kicked again, harder this time, and Min-yi made a small sound at the back of his throat, almost a laugh. Almost. She turned her head a fraction and caught the shape of his mouth in the glass. He was not smiling. He had not smiled in 2 years. He had come close here and there in the bath on her birthday, in the kitchen at 3 in the morning. Never the full thing. The dimples that, according to his gray tant, ran in the bones of the CO patriarchs had stayed buried under his jaw for 2 long years. Her dressing gown had slipped a little on the right shoulder. He noticed. He did not fix it. His thumb traced one small circle on her belly, then went still. "There is a dinner on Thursday," he said. "Old Han wants me at the table. Old Han always wants you at the table. This one is different." "How?" He did not answer. The silence between them grew its familiar shape, the shape it always took when the council was the subject. "Minyi, I will be home before midnight." "How?" He took a small breath. He did not look at her, he looked at the city. "It is about the boy." She felt the baby shift, low and sudden, as if he too had heard. She pressed her hand over Minyi's and held it there. She did not let him pull away. "And what will you tell them?" she said. "I will tell them what I have always told them, that I need more time." "More time for what?" He did not answer. She turned in his arms then, fully, and looked up at him. He was a head taller. The lamp from the kitchen carved one half of his face into gold and left the other half in shadow. He had the bones of a man you could not argue with. He also had the eyes of a man who had been arguing with himself for a very long time. "Minyi, don't. How long have I been here?" "Nicole, how long?" 2 years. "And how many times have I walked into that room?" He closed his eyes. "You know how many?" "None, none." He pressed his forehead against hers. He did this when he could not speak. She let him. 2 years had taught her the precise length of his silences, the way some women learn the length of a song. She had stopped trying to fill them. She had stopped, also, weeping when he asked her to wait. The first time, she had cried in the bathroom for an hour. The second time, she had cried only after he left. The third time, dry. By the 10th, she had stopped crying altogether. It was not that the wound had closed. It was that the wound had grown a callus. "Wait a little longer," he murmured now. The same words, the same low pitch, the same careful breath after them. "How much longer?" "Until I find the way to bring you in without breaking you." "I am already inside, Minyi. You just refuse to open the door." He did not have an answer for that. He never did. The baby kicked. She felt his hand respond, instinctive, splaying wider on her belly. "He is going to know," she said quietly. "He is going to know whether his father said his name out loud or not." "I know. Do you?" He opened his eyes. For one moment in the lamplight, the line of his mouth softened, and she thought, just for that second, that the dimples might come up. They did not. The line set itself again. He pulled back. He went to the counter. He opened the paper bag and laid the rice cakes on a small porcelain plate, the way her own grandmother used to arrange biscuits on a saucer in Atlanta, years before any of this began. She watched him work. She watched the tiger on his neck move with the muscles of his shoulders. She watched the wedding ring he did not wear, the empty space on his left hand, the place where another woman would have demanded gold and she had never asked. "Sit," he said. "Eat." She sat. They ate rice cakes in silence at the kitchen island, the two of them, and the baby between them, and the city behind them, and the room above them that she had never been allowed to enter. That room was 3 floors up. The CO Tower had 86 floors. Most of them held offices and apartments owned by men with very long surnames. The 54th floor held one room, the council room. Mahogany walls, mahogany table, dark red carpet from the Joseon era, 6 chairs and a half-moon and 1 chair at the head. She had walked past the door once, the night Minyi had been called up at 2 in the morning. She had stood in the corridor while the elevator waited, and she had heard, through the thick wood, the slow tap of a cane on a hard floor, 3 taps, old Han opening a session. She had walked away before the door opened. That had been the night she had first known, not believed, known, that this man she loved would never bring her up to the 54th floor, that her son would be born into a love that the men in the half-moon would weigh and find too dark, that 2 years of nights had been, in the books of the CO Council, 2 years of secret. She thought, sometimes, of the morning she had first arrived in Seoul. November, 2 Novembers ago. Minyi had picked her up at Incheon himself, driving the car, no driver, no guards visible. He had taken her bag from her hand at the curb and held it like it weighed nothing. He had said, "I will give you a life," and she had believed him, because she had been 30 hours awake and he had smelled like cedar and the air had smelled like a country she did not yet know. The life he had given her had been this apartment, this view, this baby, and a door she could not knock on. She thought of her mother at the kitchen table in Atlanta the morning before the flight. Her mother had not asked her to stay. Her mother had taken her hand and said one thing only. "Daughter, make sure he says your name where it counts." Nicole had nodded and not understood. She understood now. She had not told Minnie she had stood at that door. She had not needed to. He had known. He always knew. The next morning, the rice cake on the counter had been her favorite kind. She finished her tea. He cleared the plate. He kissed the top of her head. He went to the bathroom to wash. The water ran. The pipes sang their soft brass song. She sat at the island and put both hands flat on the marble. She breathed. In Atlanta, her mother had taught her one thing about love that Nicole had only now begun to understand. Love, her mother had said, is not what a man says in a kitchen at night. Love is what a man says in a room full of his own people in the middle of the afternoon. Minnie had never said her name in any such room. Her phone buzzed against the marble. "Catherine." The screen lit up with a single line. "Asterisk, are you up?" Asterisk, Nicole typed back. Asterisk, yes. Asterisk, asterisk, talk. Asterisk, she slid off the stool. She walked to the long couch by the window. She lowered herself with one hand on her belly, the other on the armrest. She put the phone to her ear. "Kath, you sound tired." "I am tired." "He home? In the shower?" He been to the room again. Nicole closed her eyes. "Thursday?" Catherine was silent for a long moment. Catherine never wasted silence. "Nicole, don't. You need a plan." "I have a plan. I am having his baby. That is my plan." "That is not a plan. That is a hostage situation with a heartbeat." Nicole laughed. It came out cracked. She had not laughed in days. The baby kicked at the noise. "Kath, I am serious. Come to Busan. Stay with me until the baby comes. Let him show up if he wants to show up." "I cannot leave him." "Why?" "Because I love him." The line was quiet. "I know you do," Catherine said. "That is exactly why you should leave." Nicole said nothing. She looked through the glass at the city she had never asked to live in. 2 years ago, she had been working night shifts in a Chicago step-down unit, scrubbing pediatric vomit off her sleeves and saving for a townhouse in Bronzeville. 2 years ago, she had not known that Korea even had a council of old men in mahogany rooms. 2 years ago, she had not been afraid of a door. Now she was afraid of a door 3 floors above her own apartment. "I am going to bed," she said. "Call me tomorrow." "I will. Promise." "I promise." She hung up. She listened to the shower run. She rested her hand on her belly. The baby was still. "Listen to me," she whispered to him. "Whatever happens, you hear me, whatever happens. Your name is yours, not theirs, not even his, yours." She felt him shift once low and settle. The shower stopped. She heard the small slap of bare feet on tile. She heard the soft pull of a towel from the rail. She knew the order of every sound this man made in this apartment. She had memorized them the way prisoners memorize the footsteps of guards. He came out in a black robe, hair damp, tiger fully visible now under the open neckline. He looked at her on the couch, hand on her belly, and his face did the thing it did when he thought she could not see him. A soft tightening at the corner of the mouth, a flicker, as close as he ever came. "Come to bed," he said. "In a minute." "Nicole, in a minute." He nodded. He went to the bedroom. He did not press. She stayed on the couch. She watched the rain stop. She watched a single black car pull up to the building across the street and a man in a charcoal coat get out and stand in the doorway and look up at the building. She watched him for a long time. He was not looking at her apartment. He was looking at the building 3 floors above hers, the 54th floor. She watched until he went inside. She stayed at the glass another minute. Her own face floated there, half lit by the kitchen lamp behind her. The brown of her skin, the gold underneath it, the long body wave hair past her shoulders, the dark eyes that had looked at babies in 3 different countries and never, until this baby, looked at one of her own. She put one hand on her belly and the other on the cold pane and felt the small distance between her own warmth and the warmth of the city she was not part of. She thought about the words she had whispered to her son a minute ago. "Asterisk, your name is yours." Asterisk, she heard them in her own voice and understood for the first time that she had not promised the baby anything she had not first promised herself. Then she got up. She walked, slow and careful, to the bedroom. She lay down beside the man she loved. He turned in his sleep and put his hand on her belly without opening his eyes. She did not sleep. She lay in the dark and counted the kicks of her son, and she counted the months he had been growing inside her, and she counted the times the man beside her had said her name out loud in the room 3 floors up. The first 2 numbers grew. The third did not move. Outside, somewhere above them on the 54th floor, a single light was on. Through the dark glass of the bedroom, she could see the faint yellow of it reflected against the cloud. Someone was up. Someone was waiting. She turned her face toward Minyi. In sleep, his mouth softened. The dimples did not show. They never showed. The CO patriarchs kept their dimples behind their jaws and only released them for the ones they were ready to claim. She closed her eyes. She did not cry. She had not cried any of the times he had asked her to wait. She was not going to start now. 8 months from now, the baby would be in her arms. 8 months from now, a cane would knock 3 times on a mahogany floor. 8 months from now, a man would shout a sentence in a room full of his own people, in the middle of the afternoon, and a child not yet born would smile for the first time in front of the wrong audience. She did not know it yet. She only knew the rhythm of her own breathing, and the warmth of the hand on her belly, and the soft yellow stain of a light burning 3 floors above her in a city that had never given her stars. She turned her face into the pillow. The baby kicked, once, gentle, like a small fist asking who was listening. She placed her hand over his shape and answered the only way she knew how. "I am," she whispered. "I always will be." Above them, the light on the 54th floor stayed on a long time. Then, just before dawn, it went out. 8 months passed the way water passes a stone. Quiet on the surface, carving underneath. Kimwoo was born on a wet March morning at Chunggi Hospital, in the same wing where Nicole had spent 2 years running other people's emergencies. The first sound he made was not a cry. It was a small surprised breath, as if he had walked into a room and forgotten why. The nurse who handed him over was a Filipina woman named Marisol, who had worked the maternity ward for 19 years. Marisol looked at the baby, then at the mother, then said only one thing in English, soft enough that the doctors did not hear. "He has your eyes, ma'am. He has somebody else's mouth." Nicole did not answer. She counted fingers. She counted toes. She held the small wet weight of him against her collarbone and felt the room tilt the way rooms tilt when you have not slept in 20 hours and your life has just split in half. Minyi arrived at the hospital 90 minutes later. He did not come through the front entrance. He came through the service corridor, past the laundry chutes, into the private suite the CO lawyers had arranged under a borrowed name. He was still in the suit he had worn to a meeting in Uedo. His tie was loosened. His knuckles, when he set his hand on the side of the bassinet, were white at the joint. He looked at the baby for a long time. He did not pick him up. He did not lean down. He just looked, the way a man looks at a door he has been told never to open. "He has my hands," he said finally. Nicole watched him from the bed. The dim light caught the edge of the tiger on his neck, the inked head of it just under his jaw, exposed where his collar had pulled sideways. She had stitched 1,000 wounds in this hospital. She knew the look of a man who was already bleeding internally and did not yet know it. "He has more than that," she said. Minyi did not ask her to explain. He did not touch the baby. He set a small velvet box on the bedside table, kissed the crown of Nicole's head once very gently, and said he would come back when the council session was done. He used the word session the way other men used the word funeral. The velvet box held a jade pendant the size of a thumbnail. Inside the jade, carved by some craftsman in Insadong who had probably been dead 20 years, was a single hanya, the character for endure, not love, not promise. Endure. Nicole did not put it on. She placed it inside the drawer beside the hospital Bible and closed the drawer. She was discharged on the 3rd day. She went back to the Gangnam penthouse because she had nowhere else in this country to go. Catherine flew in from Houston that same week, took one look at the apartment, one look at the baby, one look at Minnie's tailored absence in every framed photograph, and sat down on the kitchen floor in her travel coat. "Girl," Catherine said, "we need to talk about exit strategy." "Not yet," Nicole said. "Then when?" "When he chooses." Catherine did not press. She stayed 11 days. She cooked jollof rice in a Korean kitchen designed by a Milanese architect, washed bottles in the same sink where Minyi rinsed his espresso cup, and held Kimwoo against her chest while Nicole slept in 3-hour increments. On the morning Catherine flew back to the States, she stood in the doorway with her sunglasses already on and said, very low, "Whatever happens, Nick, you don't beg. Not for him, not for them, not for nobody." Nicole nodded once. She did not say goodbye. Catherine did not turn around. 8 months. The boy grew the way boys grow when they are loved by exactly one parent and tolerated by a household of staff. He learned to grip Nicole's finger. He learned to laugh at the brass elephants on the foyer console. He learned the sound of his father's footsteps in the corridor and would turn his head toward the door before the door opened, every time, as if his small bones already knew something the rest of him had not been told. Minyi held him exactly 4 times in 8 months, each time the same way. Both palms flat under the baby's back, elbows locked, the posture of a man diffusing something. Each time he handed the baby back inside of 3 minutes. Each time the back of his shirt was damp with sweat between the shoulder blades, even in winter. Nicole counted. She did not say she was counting. The summons came on a Tuesday in November. A black sedan in front of the building at 3 in the afternoon. A driver Nicole did not recognize. A handwritten card on cream stock with a single line in Korean and English. "Bring the child. Han Sang-hoon." Minyi was in Hong Kong. He had been there for 9 days handling a port arbitration the lawyers said only he could close. Nicole called his line 3 times. It went to a Cantonese voicemail each time. She did not leave a message. She dressed Kimwoo in the cream knit set Catherine had sent from Houston, the one with the small bone buttons. She wrapped the beige cashmere blanket around him twice. She put on the camel midi dress, the structured wool blazer, low leather heels. Her hair she pulled into a low chignon, smooth at the temples, the body waves coiled neatly at the nape. Small gold studs in her ears. The solitaire on her right hand, the one Minyi had given her in the 2nd year, the one she had never called an engagement ring because he had never called it one either. She did not put on lipstick. She wanted them to see her mouth exactly the way it was. The sedan took her to a low building in Pyeongchang-dong, the old quarter, where the streets still bent the way streets bent in the 1960s, and the trees were older than the Republic. The driver did not speak. He led her up 3 stone steps, through a courtyard of white gravel, past a sliding door of dark wood, and into a hallway that smelled of cedar smoke and old paper. A woman in a dove-gray hanbok bowed to her at the inner door. The woman did not look at the baby. The woman did not look at Nicole's face. She looked at a point somewhere between Nicole's shoulder and the wall and gestured forward with both hands. The chamber was long and low. The walls were paneled in dark mahogany rubbed black with age. The floor was covered in a single carpet the color of dried blood, edge to edge, no border. 6 men sat on the far side of a mahogany table polished to a mirror. They sat in a half-moon, 3 on each side of the center seat, each of them in dark suits or black ceremonial hanbok, depending on the year their wives had given up trying to dress them. In the center seat was Old Han. He was 78 years old. His hair was short and white and combed back from a forehead that looked carved out of dry river clay. His beard was clipped close to the jaw. His eyes were the color of cold tea. He wore a black hanbok with silver edging at the collar, and across his lap in both hands lay the Bengala. Dark wood, polished, the silver head shaped into a tiger with its mouth open and its teeth bared. He did not rise. None of them rose. To his right sat Park Teal, the bald one, gold-rimmed glasses catching the lamplight, jade ring on the middle finger of his right hand. To hand's left, Choi Byung-ho, the scar above the right brow, dressed all in black, no tie, the shoulders of a man who had broken jaws for a living before he learned to break contracts. Yoon Dishik, thin, watching. Lee Jinpyo, broad, bald, hands folded. Young Hyun Seok, the tallest, age spots on the long backs of his hands, eyes already half closed as if the proceeding were boring him. Min-yi was already there. He was standing along the side wall. He had flown back from Hong Kong overnight, she realized. His suit was the same one. There was a faint crease at the small of his back where a seat belt had pressed it for 6 hours. He did not look at her when she came in. He looked at the carpet, at a spot 2 feet in front of his shoes. The lady in the dove-gray hanbok closed the door behind Nicole and was gone. Nicole walked to the spot they had clearly prepared for her. A single low stool, dead center, 3 meters from the table. No chair for the child. She did not sit. She stood beside the stool with Kim-woo on her left hip, his small head turned against her collarbone, the cashmere blanket trailing over her arm. Old Han raised the Bengala. He brought it down once. The silver tiger struck the wood floor through the carpet, a deep, dry sound like the first crack in ice. He brought it down twice. He brought it down 3 times. The third strike hung in the air a long beat. Nobody breathed. Nicole could hear, very distantly, a kettle somewhere in another part of the house. Seo Min-yi, Old Han said. His Korean was the slow, careful Korean of an old man who has never in his life been interrupted. You have asked this council to recognize a child. Min-yi's voice came out level. I have not asked, I have informed. You have informed, Old Han repeated, as if tasting the word and finding it slightly spoiled. Very well, the council has reviewed the matter. The council has questions. He turned his head. The dry skin at his neck creased. His eyes found Nicole. They did not find Kim-woo. He looked at her the way a man looks at an unfamiliar coin to decide whether it is currency or souvenir. Miss Richardson, he said. He spoke in English now. His English was careful, formal, accented but clean. You have been a guest in this country for 3 years. You have been a guest in this family for 2. We thank you for your patience. Nicole did not answer. She had decided in the car that she would not speak unless directly addressed by a question. Old Han's eyes moved at last to the bundle on her hip. They moved slowly, as if traveling a great distance. They did not stay long. This child, he said, still in English, still to Nicole, was born outside the registry of this house. He carries a foreign mother's surname. His features, I am told, are unusual. He paused. He let the word unusual sit in the room like a small dead animal on a clean table. Then he turned back to Min-yi. He shifted into Korean, which he knew Nicole understood well enough now, after 2 years of nightly lessons, to follow every syllable. He spoke softly. The softness was the cruelest part. Do you truly, he said, want to stain the Seo bloodline with this blood? The chamber tightened. Nicole felt it in her teeth. Park Tae-il's jade ring caught the lamp. Choi Byung-ho's scar moved once when his eyebrow lifted a 1/4 inch. Young Hyun Seok opened his eyes fully for the first time. Min-yi's mouth opened. It closed. It opened again. She watched him. She watched the man she had loved for 2 years. The man whose hand had rested on her belly for 38 weeks. The man who had once cried in her kitchen at 4 in the morning over a brother he could not save. She watched the muscles along his jaw lock. She watched his throat work. She watched the tiger on his neck shift a 1/4 inch as some animal inside him bared its own teeth at something neither of them could see. She watched him panic. He raised his arm. It came up faster than he meant it to, fingers already pointing, the gold of the signet ring on his little finger flashing once, and the index finger of his right hand drove straight across the air toward the bundle of cream knit on Nicole's hip. No blood of mine, he shouted. Is that dark? The English of it cracked across the mahogany and bounced back off the far wall. The Korean translation arrived inside Nicole's head a half-second behind, the way a punch arrives after the sound of it. The 6 old men did not move. Park Tae-il blinked once. Choi Byung-ho's mouth did something that, on another face in another room, might have been the start of a smile. Kim-woo was 8 months old. He did not understand a word of what had just been said. He understood his father's voice. He had been turning his head toward that voice in corridors since the day his neck was strong enough to turn. He had been waiting for that voice for 9 days, because Minyi had been in Hong Kong and the apartment had been quiet. And now the voice had finally arrived, big and close and shouting, and a small finger was pointing right at him, and the world was full of his father at last. The baby lifted his face from Nicole's collarbone. He looked, with his whole round body, in the direction of the sound. His eyes, large and dark and CEO, fixed on the finger of the man who had made him, and Kim-woo smiled. It was the wide, open, full-gummed smile of an 8-month-old who has just been noticed. 2 small lower teeth, a bubble of spit at the corner, and on either side of that smile, sunk into the soft brown cheeks lit gold by the lamps, 2 small asymmetric depressions appeared. The right one a hair deeper than the left. The exact rare genetic mark of the CO patriarchs, the one old Han carried under his own beard, the one Minyi carried under 4 years of refusing to smile in council, the one Minyi's grandfather had carried into a war and out of it. The dimples landed in the chamber like coins, dropped on glass. Park T-il's jade ring stopped moving. Choi Byung-ho's half-smile died on his face. Yoon Di-shik leaned forward 2 centimeters, the way men lean toward an X-ray. Lee Jinpyo's folded hands unfolded. Jung Hyeon-seok's age-spotted hand rose, very slowly, and covered his own mouth. Old Han closed his eyes. He did not open them for a long time. The Bengala lay flat across his lap. His knuckles on the silver tiger were the color of paper. When he finally opened his eyes, they were not on the baby. They were not on Minyi. They were on the mahogany grain of the table in front of him, 3 feet of polished wood that suddenly seemed to interest him more than the entire room. Minyi's arm was still raised. The finger was still pointing. Somewhere inside him, a man was screaming. His face did not move. Nicole did not look at the council. She did not look at the dimples on her son's cheeks, the dimples she had known about since the boy was 4 months old, the dimples she had photographed and never sent to anyone. She looked at Minyi, only at Minyi. She looked at him the way a surgeon looks at a chart at the moment of declaring time of death. She adjusted the cashmere blanket. She tucked it around Kim-woo's small back. She kissed the top of his head once, lightly, where the soft black curls were starting to come in. Then she walked. 3 steps forward, until she was close enough to the table that old Han could have reached out with the Bengala and touched her sleeve if he had chosen to. He did not choose. His eyes stayed on the wood. She spoke in English. She spoke quietly. The room was quiet enough to carry it. "He is not your blood," she said. "He is only mine." She turned. She walked past Minyi without looking at him. She heard him breathe in once, sharp, as if to speak. She did not slow down. She crossed the dried blood carpet. She reached the double doors. The woman in the dove-gray hanbok was already there, hands clasped, eyes on the floor. The doors were pulled open. Behind her, 6 old men sat without moving. Behind her, a man with a tiger on his neck stood with his arms still half raised, as if his body had not yet been informed that the war was over and he had lost. The doors closed. The hallway smelled of cedar smoke. The sedan was waiting in the courtyard. The driver opened the rear door without comment. Nicole settled Kim-woo on her lap. She buckled the seat belt across both of them. The baby looked up at her, the dimples still faintly present in his cheeks, and made a small, contented sound. She did not cry in the car. She did not cry on the elevator up to the 54th floor. She did not cry in the foyer of the Gangnam penthouse, surrounded by the brass elephants and the framed photographs of cities Minyi had taken her to. She walked into the bedroom. She set Kim-woo in the bassinet. She opened the closet. She took down a single soft-sided suitcase from the top shelf. She began, very neatly, to fold the boy's clothes. By midnight, she had 2 suitcases packed. By 2 in the morning, she had a flight booked to Busan on her own card, in her own name, with her son's American passport zipped into the inside pocket of her blazer. By 3, she was on the curb at Incheon with a sleeping baby on her chest. Behind her, in a low chamber in Pyeongchangdong, a Bengala lay across the lap of an old man who had not opened his eyes in 20 minutes. Across the city, on the 54th floor in Gangnam, the lights came back on at 4 in the morning. Min-yi stood in the empty foyer with the velvet box from the hospital open in one hand and the jade pendant cold in the other. He did not call her. He did not chase her. He sat down on the marble floor in his Hong Kong suit and stayed there until the sun rose over the Han. She did not look back at the skyline as the plane lifted. She looked down at the small, warm weight of her son. She watched his cheeks in the cabin light. The dimples were gone now. The dimples only came when he smiled. She decided, somewhere over Daegu, that she would teach him to smile so often that the world would forget where the dimples had come from. She decided, somewhere over the Nakdong River, that she was done waiting for any man to say her son's name out loud. 4 years is a long time to a child. 4 years is also a long time to a wound, if no one opens it. Kim-woo turned 5 months in a sublet over a fish market in Nampodong, and his mother learned the bus routes of Busan with him strapped against her chest, in a cotton wrap she had stitched herself from a hospital sheet. He turned a year in a small apartment in Sanyong with a view of a parking lot and a sliver of the East Sea between 2 buildings. He turned 2 in a better apartment in Hyundai, on the 11th floor, with a view of the whole bay. By the time he turned 4, his mother owned the 18th floor of a glass tower 3 blocks inland. The plaque on the door said Richardson Healthcare Strategy in English on the top line and the same words in clean Hangul underneath. The reception desk was a single slab of pale oak. The receptionist was a Korean woman in her 50s named Mrs. Cho, who wore reading glasses on a thin chain and answered the phone in 3 languages. Nicole did not advertise. She did not need to. In 2 years, she had restructured the entire continuing care unit of the largest private hospital chain in the South. In 3, she had been hired by the Regional Health Ministry as a confidential consultant on staffing models. Her invoices were paid within 48 hours. Her contracts were short, surgical, and signed in fountain pen. The Korean executives who hired her called her Director Richardson with the slight, careful bow they used for foreign experts who had earned it. They did not ask about the boy in the framed photograph on her desk. They had learned, very quickly, that this was not a question one asked her twice. The boy in the framed photograph was 4. He had his mother's dark eyes and his father's mouth, and on the wall behind her desk hung a finger painting of a tiger that he had made in kindergarten that the school director had hung in the lobby for a week before letting him take it home. Nicole had framed it the same day. She did not explain the tiger to anyone who asked. His name was Kim-woo Richardson on every legal document in the Republic of Korea. He spoke Korean to Mrs. Cho and English to his mother, and a mix of both to the dog, the downstairs neighbor, sometimes brought up in the elevator. He knew the word for grandmother in 3 languages, even though he had met none of them. He had dimples that came out when he laughed too hard, and he laughed too hard at almost everything, because his mother had been very patient about teaching him how. She had not heard from Min-yi in 4 years, not a letter, not a wire transfer, not a card on the boy's birthday. The silence had been so total, so disciplined, that for the first 18 months she had assumed he was dead. He was not dead. On a Tuesday in early March, in a glass corner office on the 47th floor of a Gangnam tower, with a brass plaque that read SEO Holdings in English and the Hanja for the family name underneath, a man in a charcoal suit walked in past 2 bodyguards without an appointment and dropped a manila envelope on CO Min-yi's desk. The man was Richard Kowalski, Polish-American, 52, robust, going to seed around the middle, gray at the temples, a nose that had been broken in 3 places and reset by someone who did not care. He chewed an unlit cigar at the corner of his mouth and wore a long charcoal overcoat over a navy suit that had been expensive 8 years ago. The bodyguards in the corridor had not stopped him because the bodyguards in the corridor were on his payroll for the next 90 seconds. "Mr. CO," he said in English with the slow, flat tongue of a man who had grown up between Chicago and Warsaw. "I hear we have not met. I am Richard. People call me the broker." Minyi did not look up from the document he was reading. He turned a page. He turned another. Kowalski waited. He chewed the cigar. He looked around the office. He noted the absence of family photographs. He noted the absence of personal effects of any kind. He noted the single object on the credenza behind the desk, a small wooden tiger, hand-carved, no bigger than a man's fist, set on a black lacquer base. "Open the envelope," Kowalski said. Minyi turned another page. Then he set down the document. He aligned the corner of it with the corner of the desk. He picked up the envelope by one edge, between thumb and forefinger, the way a surgeon picks up something that might be contagious. Inside were photographs, 12 of them, high resolution, taken with a long lens. A boy in a small Navy school uniform walking through the front gate of a kindergarten in Hyundai, holding a woman's hand. The woman was black, tall, in a camel coat. Her hair fell past her shoulders in dark waves. Her face was turned 3/4 away from the lens, but the line of her jaw was unmistakable. A boy laughing at something off-camera, his head thrown back, his small mouth open. 2 dimples on his cheeks, the right one slightly deeper than the left. A boy on a beach in Guangeli at low tide, crouched over a tide pool, a small red plastic shovel in his hand. A boy and his mother at the window of a bakery in Centum City. The woman pointing at something on a tray, the boy on his toes. A boy asleep in a car seat in the back of a black SUV. A boy, a boy, a boy. Minyi set the photographs down very carefully on the desk in front of him. He stacked them. He squared the edges. He set them down again. "You understand," Kowalski said, "that this kind of information has a market price. I am giving you the chance to set it yourself. I find that polite men are usually grateful." Minyi's face did not move. "There is also a buyer in Vladivostok," Kowalski continued, gently, conversationally. "There is a buyer in Macau. There is a buyer in Tirana who has been waiting 2 years for any CO weakness at all. And there is a domestic gentleman, here in your own city, who is on the council that I believe you know. He has been asking, quietly, for some time." Minyi lifted his eyes for the first time. They were perfectly still. They were not angry. They were not afraid. They were the eyes of a man who had been waiting for this exact conversation for 4 years and 7 days, and who had a folder in the 3rd drawer of his desk that contained the answer to it. "How much?" Minyi said in English. The voice was low and even. 2 million American, Kowalski said. "Cash, by Friday. After which the photographs and the file are returned to you and we never speak again. A simple business." Minyi nodded once. He opened the 3rd drawer of his desk. He took out a slim leather portfolio. He set it on the table between them. He flipped the leather cover open with one finger. Inside were stacked bricks of unmarked American hundreds. Neat, pre-counted. "There is 1 million here," he said. "There will be 1 million more in this room in 40 minutes. You will sit, you will drink coffee. My assistant will bring it. When the 2nd million arrives, my driver will take you to a car. You will give my driver the names of every buyer you have approached. You will give him the location of every copy of every photograph. Then you will go home." Kowalski smiled around the cigar. "Mr. CO, I have been doing this for 30 years. You are very fast. I appreciate fast." "I know," Minyi said. The coffee arrived. They drank it. The 2nd million arrived in a steel briefcase carried by a young man in a black turtleneck. Kowalski counted both stacks. He gave up the names. He gave up the storage locker in Iriawan. He gave up the 2nd locker in Yongin. He gave up the laptop in his hotel room and the password to it. He stood. He buttoned his coat. He turned toward the door. The young man in the black turtleneck shot him once in the back of the neck before he reached the threshold. The body folded forward. The cigar rolled onto the carpet. Minyi did not stand. He looked at the body for a moment. Then he looked at the young man. "The buyers," he said. "Tonight," the young man said, "all of them." "Yes, Sajangnim. The laptop? Already collected, already burned." Minyi nodded. He looked down at the photograph on top of the stack on his desk. The boy in the Navy school uniform, holding a woman's hand. He laid his palm flat over the photograph. He left it there for a long time. When he lifted his hand, his palm was wet. He did not know when he had begun to sweat. He wiped his palm on the leg of his trouser. He stood. He walked to the credenza. He put his hand on the small wooden tiger. He closed his eyes. "Prepare the helicopter," he said. "I am going to Busan." It took 12 hours to scrub the office, 12 hours to clear his calendar for the rest of the week, 12 hours to brief the 4 men he trusted with his life. It took 18 minutes in a black Eurocopter to cross the spine of the country. By the time the rotors slowed on a private pad at the eastern edge of Busan, the sun was coming up over the East Sea and turning the bay the color of beaten copper. He had not been in this city since he was 23 years old. He did not know the streets. He did not need to. He had memorized her buildings, addressed the same way other men memorized the prayers their mothers taught them. The car stopped on a quiet residential block in Hyundai 3 blocks back from the water. A glass tower. 18th floor. He did not get out at first. He sat in the back of the sedan and looked up at the windows. He counted floors. He counted lit windows. At 7:12 in the morning, a light came on in a window on the 18th floor. He stepped out of the car. He buttoned his coat. He walked into the lobby. The doorman recognized neither his face nor his accent and looked twice at the cut of his suit before nodding him toward the elevator. He rode up in silence. He stood in the corridor in front of the door marked 1804 for 90 seconds before he rang the bell. The door opened. The woman who opened it was not Nicole. She was black, taller than Nicole, with cheekbones high enough to cast their own shadows, and an afro pulled back from her face with a wide silk band the color of red wine. She wore a deep emerald suit cut sharp at the shoulders. Gold geometric earrings caught the light from the hallway. Her eyes were the warm, hard brown of someone who has watched a friend rebuild herself from rubble and is not in the mood for nostalgia. He recognized her. He had never seen her in person, but he had read 3 years of corporate filings with her name on them. Catherine Okonkwo, counsel to Richardson Healthcare Strategy, friend of Nicole since college in Atlanta, currently licensed to practice corporate law in the Republic of Korea with chambers in Seamyeon. She looked him up and down once. She did not smile. "Mr. CEO," she said, "Counselor Okonkwo, you found us faster than I would have liked." "It was not a search," he said quietly. "It was an arrival." Catherine considered him. She considered the suit, the tiger at the edge of his collar, the way his hands hung at his sides without tension and without ease. She considered the small leather case at his feet, packed for a stay of indeterminate length. She considered, mostly, the look in his eyes, which was a look she had seen on men in courtrooms 5 minutes before they pleaded guilty to things their lawyers had begged them to deny. She stepped back into the apartment. She did not invite him in. She let him follow. The foyer smelled of cedar and bergamot and somewhere, deeper, of a child's shampoo. There was a small pair of light-up sneakers neatly aligned beside the door. There was a low bench with a folded blue scarf on it. There were no photographs on the walls of the foyer. There was a long mirror. Minyi looked at himself in the mirror as he passed and did not recognize the man he saw. Catherine led him into the living room. A wall of glass faced the bay. The sun was full up now. Centum City glittered to the west. The light fell across a pale rug and across a low oak coffee table and across the back of a woman standing at the window with her arms folded. She was wearing a soft cream cashmere sweater and dark trousers, and she was barefoot on the rug. Her hair was up in a loose twist held with a single tortoise pin. Her shoulders were narrower than he remembered and somehow stronger. She did not turn around. "Sit down, Mr. CEO," she said. Catherine gestured to a low armchair. Minyi sat. The chair was lower than he had expected. It put him slightly below eye level of the woman at the window. He understood, immediately, that this had been arranged on purpose. Catherine sat on the couch opposite him and crossed her legs and rested one elbow on the arm. Her gaze did not leave his face. "She has been waiting for you for 4 years," Catherine said, in English evenly, "but not the way you are imagining." Nicole turned then. Slowly. The morning light caught the gold undertone in her skin and the deep dark of her eyes and the line of her jaw, which was harder than it had been 4 years ago and somehow more beautiful. She did not look at him with hatred. She did not look at him with longing. She looked at him the way an administrator looks at a contractor who has arrived late to a project he should never have been hired for. "Where is the body?" she said. Minyi blinked. "The man who took the photographs," Nicole said. "The man whose name has crossed 3 borders in 48 hours looking for a buyer for my son. Where is the body?" He did not ask how she knew. He did not insult her by pretending. "Cremated by midnight last night. Ashes in the East China Sea by dawn. And the buyers? 3 of them are no longer reachable. The 4th is domestic. He sits on a council whose name I do not need to say in this room." Nicole nodded once. The nod was small and clinical, the nod of a charge nurse confirming that the patient had been stabilized. "So you are here," she said, "because the world now knows that he exists. And it knows because of you. And the only reason you are still standing in my living room and not waiting in the hallway is that I cannot, at this moment, afford to refuse the protection that comes attached to your name." He did not answer. "Understand me, Minyi." Her voice did not rise. It did not need to. "You are not here as his father. You are not here as my anything. You are here as a security detail. You will sleep in the guest room at the end of the hall. You will not enter the boys' room. You will not speak to him unless I am present. You will not tell him who you are. You will not touch him. If any of those conditions becomes uncomfortable for you, the front door is exactly where you left it." He inclined his head a fraction of an inch. "Say it out loud," she said. "I understand. Say my conditions back to me." He said them back to her, each one, in order. In Korean and then in English, because she had not specified, and because part of him needed her to know that he had been listening to every word in both languages for 4 years across a silence she had not known he was keeping. When he finished, she turned back to the window. "Catherine will show you the guest room," she said. "Breakfast is at 7:30. My son is not a topic of conversation at this table. He is a child. He will be treated like one." Catherine stood. She gestured down the hallway with one manicured hand. Minyi rose from the chair. At the threshold of the living room he paused. He did not turn around. "His name on the kindergarten roster," he said quietly. "Is it Kimwoo Richardson or Richardson Kimwoo?" Nicole did not look away from the bay. "That is not your question to ask," she said. "Not yet, maybe not ever." He nodded once, to the back of her head, and followed Catherine down the hall toward a room he had not earned the right to sleep in a city he had not earned the right to enter, in a life that had been built without him, brick by brick, while he had been counting floors from across a country. The apartment fell into the kind of silence that is weight. Nicole stood in the hallway for a long moment after the guest room door clicked shut behind Minyi. She listened to her own breathing. She listened to Catherine murmuring something on the phone in the kitchen, low and clipped, the cadence of a lawyer pulling favors at midnight. She listened for Kimwoo and heard nothing, which meant the boy had finally surrendered to sleep. Then she walked, in her bare feet, back into the living room. The coat was still draped across the back of the armchair where Minyi had left it before Catherine had led him away. Black wool. Heavy. Custom cut, the inner lining stitched in a discreet charcoal silk that caught the lamplight. Nicole did not approach it for any reason she could have named out loud. She was simply not yet ready to lie down beside her own decision. So she crossed the room and she lifted the coat, intending to hang it on the rack by the door, intending nothing more than that. The envelope slid out of the inner breast pocket and hit the rug with the dry, papery sound of a thing that had been waiting 4 years to fall. She froze. It was a manila envelope, unmarked, fat with whatever it contained, the flap secured with a single brass clasp worn smooth at the edges from being opened and closed too many times. The corners were soft. The paper had the particular fatigue of something that had been carried, not stored. Nicole bent slowly. She picked it up the way one picks up a thing that might be alive. She held it in both hands. She looked at the closed door of the guest room down the hall. Then she sat down on the rug, cross-legged, in her silk robe, and she opened it. The first photograph stopped her heart. It was Kimwoo. He was perhaps a year old. He was sitting in the grass of a park she did not recognize, in a country she could not place at first glance, wearing the cream-colored knit sweater her sister had sent for his first birthday. He was holding a wooden block in one fist. He was looking up at something off-camera with that wide, slack-jawed wonder of a baby who has just discovered that the world has corners. The photograph had been taken from a distance, with a long lens. Nicole could tell, because the depth of field was wrong for a phone, and the angle was the angle of a man standing very still on the other side of a hedge. She set it on her knee. She pulled out the next one. Kim Woo, 18 months, in a stroller in what looked like a Singapore hawker market. Her sister had taken him for 2 weeks. Nicole had not been there. The photograph caught the boy biting into a piece of mango, juice running down his wrist. Behind him, just visible at the edge of the frame, the back of her sister's head. The next one. Kim Woo, 2 years old, walking. His first real steps had been at 14 months. By 2 he was running, and the photograph caught him mid-stride across the courtyard of the Busan apartment building they had lived in for a single year. The year Nicole had not yet decided whether to stay in Korea or take him home. The photographer had been standing on the roof opposite. Nicole knew that roof. She had complained to the building manager about it once because of pigeons. Her fingers had begun, very slightly, to tremble. She kept pulling. There were dozens. There were perhaps 100. They were not arranged in any chronological order, which told her something terrible. They had been carried this way, shuffled and reshuffled, looked at in no system, the way a man looks at a thing he is keeping himself alive on. Kim Woo in Tokyo with her cousin. Kim Woo at 3, holding a pinwheel, at the fishing village near Tongyong her mother had taken him to for a long weekend. Kim Woo at the daycare she had finally enrolled him in last spring, his small back disappearing through a door painted the color of a tangerine. Each one taken from a distance. Each one taken without the boy knowing. Each one taken without Nicole knowing. Underneath the photographs, the documents, report papers, stapled. Quarterly, the kind of clean, dispassionate prose used by private security firms that charge by the hour. Subject profile, the first one read in English. Designation, Asset 1 minor. Age at observation start, 9 months. Then a list, bullet points. Wait at the 12-month pediatric visit. Height. Vaccination calendar, current. School registration, prospective. Allergies, none confirmed. Pediatrician of record, name and clinic. Emergency contact protocol. Lawyer of record, Okonkwo. See, Nicole's breath went out of her chest in one short, soundless rush. Catherine had been the lawyer of record. Catherine had known. She kept reading. Subject profile, the second one read. Designation, Asset 2 primary. Designation note, primary subject in all matters of safety, secondary subject in observation priority by direction of principal. Then her own name, then her address, then her workplace, then a list of her daily movements that was so accurate it took her a moment to recognize it was not her own diary. She set that one down very carefully, as though it might break. She reached deeper into the envelope. There was a notebook. It was small. Leather. The leather worn at the spine the way leather wears when it has lived inside a pocket for years. There was no marking on the cover. She opened it. The handwriting was his. She had only seen Minyi's handwriting twice in her life. Once on the inside of a card he had given her at the hospital cafeteria the week she had told him she was pregnant. Once on a contract she had signed without reading because she had trusted him then. She knew the slope of it. She knew the way he made his sevens with the small horizontal cross-stroke, a habit he had told her once was a relic of his English boarding school. The first page said, in English, dated 4 years ago to the day, first word. Ama. He said it at the cousin's apartment in Daegu. He was 11 months old. I was on a balcony in Seoul. I heard about it 40 minutes later from the third-floor man across the street. The second page, first tooth, lower left, at 10 months. The doctor sent the file to the lawyer. The lawyer sent the file to me. I keep it because I want to remember the exact day I was not there. The third, first step, 14 months, I have it on video. I watched it 41 times the night it arrived. I am writing this because I need to remember that I watched it 41 times and that I did not call her, and that not calling her was the only gift I knew how to give. Nicole pressed the heel of her hand against her mouth. She turned the pages. First haircut. First time he asked who his father was, she had told him, age 3, that his father lived very far away and that he loved him very much. And Minyi had written underneath, in a hand that had pressed harder than the rest of the notebook, "She lied for me. I do not deserve to have been lied for. First swim. First fall from a bicycle. First fever above 39. The number of nights between January of last year and March of last year, when Kim-woo had cried for more than 20 minutes without being able to be soothed, and what Nicole had done on each of those nights, which Minyi had recorded in the precise, expressionless prose of a man trying very hard not to feel anything at all. She walked him for 63 minutes. She sang the song about the moon. She did not cry until 04:12. She did not cry until 04:12. Nicole had not told anyone she had cried that night. She had been alone. She had been alone, and a man on a balcony in Seoul had known. A man on a balcony in Seoul had paid someone to know. She closed the notebook. She set it on the rug. She put her hands flat on the floor on either side of her knees, and she breathed very slowly, the way she taught her patients to breathe when she was preparing them for a procedure that was going to hurt them whether they consented to it or not. She was not crying. She wanted to be crying. She wanted, very badly, to feel the soft, melting warmth of being moved. She wanted to feel the small, dangerous loosening of a heart that had been clenched for 4 years, finally being given permission to open. She wanted, for a single dishonest second, to walk down that hallway and put her palm against the closed door of the guest room and say his name. But what she felt, when she sat very still and listened to what her body was actually telling her, was not warmth. It was rage. It was rage in its purest, coldest, most distilled form, the rage of a woman who has just discovered that her grief has been someone else's hobby. The rage of a woman who has just discovered that the silence she had survived had not been absence at all, but observation. The rage of a woman who has just discovered that the man who had refused to claim her son in public had been clipping the boy's growth chart into a leather notebook in private. Like a botanist documenting a flower he had no intention of watering. She stood up. She walked down the hallway in her bare feet. She did not knock. The guest room was dark except for the soft blue spill of the moon through the half-open blinds. Minyi was sitting on the edge of the bed, his jacket off, his white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, the dark line of the tiger tattoo crawling up the side of his neck and disappearing into his hair. He had been holding his head in his hands. He looked up when the door opened. He saw the envelope. He did not speak. Nicole walked to the foot of the bed. She did not turn on the light. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The voice she used was the voice she used on the patients she had decided were going to live regardless of whether they cooperated with the process. 4 years, she said. He said nothing. 4 years of photographs. 4 years of reports, 4 years of a notebook you carried in your pocket every day like a confession you never had the courage to make to a priest. She held the envelope up between them. You knew when he cut his first tooth, you knew when he said his first word, you knew the song I sang to him when he had a fever in January. You knew the night I cried at 4 in the morning, you knew everything, and you said nothing. His mouth opened, it closed. Don't, she said. Do not speak yet, I am not finished. He bowed his head. I told myself a story for 4 years, she said. It was a hard story, but it was a clean story. I told myself a man had stood in a room of old men and chosen the old men. I told myself I had loved a coward, and that I had survived loving a coward, and that the lesson of loving a coward was that I would never love one again. I told that story to my son. I told it to my mother. I told it to Catherine. I told it to myself every morning when I looked at the brown skin on Kim-woo's wrist and reminded myself that brown skin had been the reason a man had pointed at my baby and said the words he said. She set the envelope on the bed between them. And now you bring me this, she said. Now you bring me 4 years of a man who was not absent, 4 years of a man who was watching, 4 years of a man who knew the exact hour his son cut his first tooth and could not pick up a telephone. 4 years of a man who paid strangers to do the one thing a father is supposed to do for free, which is to be present in his own house. She leaned forward slightly. "Do you understand what you have just done to me?" He raised his eyes. They were wet. They were wet in a way she had never seen on his face in 2 years of sleeping beside him. He opened his mouth. The sound that came out of it was not a word. It was the small, broken consonant of a man trying to say her name and failing. "No," she said. "No, you do not get to cry. Not in this room, not in front of me. Crying is for women who have been left. Crying is for sons whose fathers did not write their first word in a leather notebook from a balcony in Seoul. Crying is not for you." "Nicole," he said. "4 years of spying on me," she said, "and not one time did you have the courage to apologize. Not one letter, not one phone call, not one message through Catherine, who I now realize has been lying to me and who I will deal with after I have dealt with you. Not one word. You watched my son grow and you kept it for yourself like a coin under a mattress. You watched me suffer and you sent men to count my suffering for you. You did this for 4 years, and then a man named Kowalski walks into your office with a photograph of my child, and only then do you put your shoes on and come to Busan." Her voice did not rise, it only sharpened. "You are not here for him, you are here for the threat. You came when the threat came. You did not come when the child came. You did not come when the mother of the child sat alone in a delivery room with one friend and no family and pushed a baby out of her body without you. You came when a stranger named Kowalski raised the price of your guilt." She straightened. "You are not the man who abandoned us," she said. "I could forgive the man who abandoned us. The man who abandoned us was at least honest about what he was. You are the man who watched. And the man who watched is worse." He had gone very still. He had not wiped his eyes. He was letting the tears run because he understood, possibly for the first time in his life, that wiping them would have been an obscenity. He spoke. His voice was lower than she had ever heard it. "I know," he said. She waited. "I know what I am," he said. "I have known what I am for 4 years. I have written it in that notebook every morning before I wrote anything about him. I have written it in English so that if anyone found the notebook they would understand it without translation. I have written, I am a coward, and I am watching my son grow up without me because I do not deserve to stop being a coward yet. I have written that every day for 4 years. I did not bring the notebook here to show it to you. I brought it here because I do not leave it anywhere. It comes with me." She did not soften. "Then why is it in my house?" she said. "Because I forgot it was in my pocket," he said. "I forgot because I have not slept since Kowalski. I forgot because when I saw your face at the door tonight I forgot what year it was." "That is not an apology," she said. "No," he said. "It is not. I have not earned the right to apologize to you yet. An apology for me tonight would be another thing I took from you. I would rather not take anything else." She looked at him for a long time. She picked up the envelope. She held it against her chest. She walked to the door. At the threshold she stopped, with her hand on the frame, and she spoke without turning around. "You will sleep in this room tonight," she said, "because Catherine has guns at every door, and because my son sleeps 2 rooms away, and because I am too tired to put you out in the street and start over with a new wall to defend. In the morning, you will tell me everything you know about Kowalski. You will tell me everything you know about who he was selling to. You will tell me what your counsel knows and what your counsel does not know. You will answer every question I ask you, and you will not look at my son while you do it. And when I have finished using you for what you are useful for, you will leave my house, and you will not come back unless I ask you to." She paused. "And you will not ask me to forgive you," she said. "Because if you ask me to forgive you, I will know that none of the last 4 years was about him. It was about you." She stepped through the door. She closed it behind her. In the hallway in the dark, with the envelope pressed against her ribs and her bare feet cold on the wood, Nicole Richardson stood very still for a long minute. Her hands were shaking. She let them shake. She did not stop them. She let her body do what her face had refused to do in front of him. Then she walked, in the dark, to her son's room, and she pushed the door open a few inches. And she looked at Kim-woo sleeping on his side with his fist curled under his chin and his small chest rising and falling in the steady, miraculous way of a child who had not yet been told that there were men in the world who would write his first word in a notebook and call that love. She watched him for a long time. She did not cry. She closed the door very softly, and in a guest room 2 doors away, a man sat alone on the edge of a bed he had not earned the right to sleep in, holding a notebook he had not earned the right to keep, and understood, for the first time in 29 years, that there was a thing in the world that being rich could not buy, and a thing in the world that being silent could not protect, and that he had spent 4 years mistaking his own shame for his son's safety, and that the woman in the next room had just, without raising her voice, taken the last small comfort he had left and shown it to him for what it was. He did not sleep that night, neither did she. The envelope sat on the kitchen counter between them in the morning, like a body neither had agreed to bury. The envelope did not get buried. It got moved. Nicole slid it from the kitchen counter into the top drawer of her desk at 6:14 in the morning, locked the drawer, and put the small brass key inside the pocket of her camel coat. She did not look at Minyi when she did it. She did not look at him when she made coffee either. She poured 1 cup, drank half of it standing at the window, and watched the gray light fall on the rooftops of Hyundai. Kim-woo woke at 6:40. She heard his small feet on the wood floor before she heard his voice. He came down the hallway in his cream pajamas, hair sticking up on one side, rubbing his eye with a closed fist. He stopped at the kitchen doorway when he saw the tall man at the table. "Mama," he said, not a question, a check. "I'm here," Nicole said. "Sit, eat." The boy climbed into his chair. Minyi watched him with the same expression he had worn the night before, the one that did not move when she had thrown the envelope at his chest. Kim-woo lifted his small spoon and ate his rice porridge slowly, his eyes on the stranger across the table the entire time. He did not smile. The dimples did not appear. Nicole was grateful for that small mercy. She walked Minyi to the door at 7:30 without speaking. He paused on the threshold. "Nicole, go to work," she said. "Whatever your work is, just go." He went. She closed the door and pressed her forehead against the wood for 1 breath. Then she straightened her shoulders, picked up her phone, and called Catherine. "Bring the contracts," she said, "and bring lunch. I have a meeting at noon and I cannot think." 800 kilometers north, in Seoul, in the room with the dark mahogany table and the deep red carpet, Park Tae-il was placing a single photograph in front of Old Han. It was a school photograph. A small boy in a navy uniform, sitting on a low bench, his hands folded politely in his lap. He was smiling at someone off camera. The dimples were clear. The right one was deeper than the left. Old Han looked at the photograph for a long time. He did not pick it up. He did not touch it. He simply looked. His thumb moved once across the silver tiger head of his cane and stopped. "Where?" he said. "Busan." Park's voice was quiet. "Kindergarten of an international clinic. The mother runs a consultancy on the 7th floor of the same building. The child is on the 3rd. How long have you known?" 2 weeks. "Why did you wait?" Park Tae-il did not answer immediately. He adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses with 1 finger. The jade ring on his middle finger caught the morning light from the window. "Because I wanted to be certain," he said. "Of the face, of the dimples, of the blood." Old Han closed his eyes. He did not open them for a full minute. When he did, he reached for the brass bell at his elbow and rang at once. The sound was soft and final, the sound of a verdict being written before it was spoken. "Convene the council," he said. "Today, 3 hours, all 6 chairs, and send a car for him." By noon, Minyi was back in Seoul. He walked into the room in a charcoal suit, no tie, the top button of his white shirt open. The tiger tattoo climbed the right side of his neck, the head of it just under his jaw. He looked at the 6 men in the half-circle. He looked at the empty seat at the head of the table where the photograph of the boy now rested face up beside Old Han's right hand. He did not look at the photograph. He sat. Old Han did not greet him. Old Han lifted the cane and brought it down on the floor. 1, 2, 3, the same 3 strikes, the same dark wood, the same red carpet. 4 years compressed into 3 small sounds. Minyi's jaw moved once. That was all. The council has reviewed new information, Old Hand said. His voice was dry, the voice of a man who had already decided. A child exists. A child with the dimples of our line. A child whose skin is not ours. A child whose mother is not ours. A child whose name is not ours. Minyi said nothing. The council convenes formally on the matter of bloodline succession. We have voted before you arrived. The vote was 6-0. Choi Byung-ho lit a cigarette. The scar on his eyebrow caught the lamplight. He did not look at Minyi. The child, Old Hand said, cannot inherit the syndicato. The color of the skin compromises the line. The illegitimacy compromises the name. The mother compromises the protocol. You will sign the public disinheritance. The document is drafted. It will be filed at the family court tomorrow morning. After the filing, the child will be removed from your operational radius. The mother will be relocated. We will arrange a generous settlement. The boy will be raised at a distance. The CO line will continue through your second son when he comes. Minyi looked at Old Hand. He still did not speak. You owe the line this, Old Hand said. You owe your father this. You owe me this. Yoon Dishik, thin in his glasses, leaned forward. Minyi-ya, it is not personal. It is structural. A boy with that face cannot stand at the head of this table. The men in Pyongyang will laugh. The men in Macau will refuse. The men in Tokyo will use it. We are protecting him, and we are protecting you. Sign, Old Hand said. He pushed a document across the table. 3 pages, heavy paper, 2 pens beside it, one black, one red. Tradition required both. Minyi looked at the document. He looked at the photograph of his son. He stood up. He did not pick up the pen. He turned. He walked to the double doors. He opened them. He walked out. Old Hand did not call him back. Old Hand turned to Park Tae-il and said very quietly, "Then we do it the other way." Park Tae-il nodded. He took out his phone. In Busan that night, the rain came in from the sea at 9:18. Nicole had just finished bathing Kimwoo. He was in his cream pajamas again, the same ones from the morning, fresh from the dryer. He was sitting on the rug in the living room building a tower out of wooden blocks. Catherine was on the couch with her shoes off, a tumbler of soju and tonic on the coffee table, her phone face down beside it. "He's getting good at the stacking," Catherine said. "He's getting good at everything," Nicole said. "I think he's going to be the kind of kid who fixes things. That's because his mother fixes everything." Nicole almost smiled. The lights flickered. They both noticed. Catherine's hand moved first toward her phone. Nicole's hand moved second toward Kimwoo. The lights did not come back. Then the building did. The first explosion was not loud. It was low. It came from somewhere under them, a deep thump that traveled up through the floor and into Nicole's heels and into her teeth. The wooden tower of blocks fell sideways. Kimwoo looked up at his mother, his eyes wide, not yet crying. "Kathy," Nicole said. Her voice was already a whisper. "The hallway." Catherine was on her feet. The soju glass hit the carpet, did not break, rolled. She scooped Kimwoo up under his arms, fast, and pressed him against her chest. Nicole hit the light switch by reflex even though she knew there was no power. The apartment was lit only by the city through the rain on the glass and by the small red emergency strip along the baseboards that had come on with the second explosion. The second explosion was closer. The hallway door rattled in its frame. "Stairs," Nicole said. "Service stairs, the south side. Now." They moved. Catherine had Kimwoo against her left shoulder. Her right hand went to the small holster at the small of her back, the holster Nicole had never asked about and never commented on. Catherine had not been only an attorney for 4 years. Nicole had always known. Nicole had never asked. She was grateful now. They reached the hallway. The lights in the corridor were out. The emergency strip ran along the floor, red, low, soft. Nicole's bare feet were cold on the tile. She had not put her shoes on. There had not been time for shoes. At the end of the corridor, the service door opened. 2 men stepped through. Black tactical jackets. Hoods up. One of them lifted his arm. Catherine turned her body so that her back was to him and her front was around Kimwoo. The shot was not loud. It was muffled. The suppressor took the bark out of it, but not the slap. The slap hit the wall behind Catherine. The second slap hit Catherine. She made a sound that was not a scream. It was a grunt, low, surprised, the sound of a body absorbing something it had not been ready for. She kept moving. She did not stop. She did not drop the boy. Nicole grabbed Catherine's free arm and pulled. "Go," Catherine said through her teeth. "South stairs, go." There was a sound from behind the two men in the corridor. A different sound. The sound of the south stairwell door slamming open from the other side. The sound of running. 3 men in different black jackets came up the stairs at a sprint, weapons drawn. Minyi's men. Minyi's permanent shadow detail in Busan, the one Nicole had not known existed, the one the envelope in her drawer had quietly funded for 4 years. The corridor became noise. Nicole did not look back. She and Catherine and Kim-woo went through the south door and down 2 flights of concrete stairs in the dark. Catherine's left shoulder was wet. The blood was on the front of Kim-woo's pajamas now too, not his blood, Catherine's blood, a dark, wide bloom that Kim-woo would later not be able to forget. At the bottom of the second flight, Catherine slid down the wall. "I'm okay," she said. "Grazed, it's a graze, take him." Nicole took the boy. Kim-woo did not cry. He was staring at the blood on his front. His eyes were enormous. His small mouth was open. He was breathing fast and shallow. "Baby," Nicole whispered. "Baby, look at Mama. Look at me, look at me." He looked at her. His eyes were Minyi's eyes. They had always been Minyi's eyes. They were Minyi's eyes now, wide and silent and far away in a place she could not reach. The dimples did not come. She held him against her chest and felt his small heart hammering against her sternum, and she felt, for the first time in 4 years, one tear come out of her right eye and slide down her cheek and fall into his hair. It was not for her broken heart. Her heart had broken in a mahogany room 4 years ago and had healed wrong, and she had learned to live with the limp. It was for him. It was for his small body in cream pajamas with another woman's blood on it, in a stairwell in Busan, in the rain, because of a name his father had not been brave enough to give him. One tear. Only one. She wiped her cheek against his hair, and she did not let another one come. The helicopter landed on the roof of the building 12 minutes later. She did not see it land. She heard it. She was sitting on the lobby floor with Kim-woo wrapped inside her cardigan, and Catherine beside her with a tourniquet of someone's belt around her upper arm, and a CO soldier kneeling in front of them pressing a clean cloth to Catherine's shoulder. The lobby smelled like cordite and rain, and the inside of a building that has just been violated. Minyi came through the front entrance at a run. He was in the same charcoal suit from the morning in Seoul. The white shirt was open at the collar. The tiger tattoo was naked on his neck. His shoes were wet. His hair was wet. His face was the color of stone. He stopped 6 feet away from her. He saw the blood on Kim-woo's pajamas. He saw it on Catherine. He saw Nicole's bare feet. He saw the single dried track of the single tear on her cheek. He went down on his knees, not a crouch, not a kneel of negotiation. He went down on both knees on the cold marble of the lobby floor, and he put his hands flat on his own thighs, and he bowed his head until his forehead almost touched the ground. It was the first time he had knelt to anything since he was a child at his grandfather's funeral. He stayed there. Nicole watched him. She did not move. She held her son. She watched the most powerful man in the city of Seoul kneel on the wet floor of her lobby, and she did not feel pity. She did not feel love. She did not feel rage. She felt something colder than all 3 of those things. She felt the absolute, surgical clarity of a woman who has been a nurse for 10 years and knows exactly when a wound is too deep to close in the field. "Get up," she said. He did not get up. "Get up, Minyi." He lifted his head. His eyes were dry. They were not dry because he was strong. They were dry because he had not been allowed to be a person who cries since he was 9 years old. "Nicole," he said, "don't." He stood. He took 1 step toward her. He looked at Kim-woo. His hand lifted, very slowly, the way you lift your hand toward a small animal in a trap, palm open, fingers loose, asking permission. Nicole turned her body. She turned her shoulder so that her son was further from him. "No," she said, Quiet, final. You do not get to touch him tonight. His hand stopped in the air. Nicole, please. You brought the council to this lobby. Her voice was a whisper, and it was steel. You brought men in black jackets to the corridor where my son builds block towers. There is blood on my best friend's coat, and there is blood on my son's pajamas, and the blood is here because of your name. You do not get to kneel in my lobby and ask to be his father now. You do not get that. Not tonight. Not from me. His face did not change. That was the worst part. He absorbed it the way a wall absorbs a thrown stone. The stone was still in him. The wall was still standing. Nicole, go. He looked at her for one more breath, then he turned. He walked back across the lobby. He did not look at his men. He did not look at Catherine. He did not look at his son. He walked to the stairwell on the far side of the lobby, the one that went up to the roof, and he opened the door and he stepped through it. The camera, if there had been a camera, would have stayed on his back as he climbed. Charcoal suit, wet hair, tiger on the neck, one hand on the rail, the stairwell light flickering once above his head. The most powerful man in the CO line, climbing alone in the dark, away from his sons, small breathing in a lobby on the second floor of a building he could no longer protect from his own name. He climbed slowly. He did not look back. When he reached the roof, the helicopter was already running. The rain was sideways now. He stood at the edge of the pad for 1 full minute, his hand on the open door of the cabin, his face turned up into the rain. His eyes were still dry. They were dry the way deserts are dry, the way bone is dry, the way the bottom of something is dry when there is nothing left below it. He got into the helicopter. He flew north. In the lobby, Nicole sat on the cold marble and held her son until the paramedics came and led Catherine out on her own feet under her own anger. Kim Woo did not speak for the rest of the night. He did not speak the next morning either. He fell asleep against his mother's chest at some point during the ambulance ride and did not wake until noon. When he woke, he looked at his mother, and then he looked at the ceiling, and then he closed his eyes again. The dimples did not appear all that day. Nicole sat by his bed in the hospital and watched his face and waited for them, and they did not come. She did not cry again. She had used her one tear in the stairwell. She would not waste another. Not on the man on the helicopter. Not on the council in Seoul. Not on the woman she used to be at 25 who had loved a man with a tiger on his neck and thought it was poetry instead of warning. At 4:00 in the afternoon, her phone rang, unknown number, Seoul prefix. She let it ring. It rang again at 4:02, the same number. She let it ring again. At 4:04, a text came through. 2 lines, in English. I do not deserve to ask. I will not ask. But there is something you must know before the next person tells you a lie. Will you sit with an old woman for 1 hour tomorrow afternoon? She comes from Seoul. Her name is Hyunju. Nicole looked at the message for a long time. She did not answer. She put the phone face down on the small white hospital table beside her son's bed, and she watched his eyelids and waited for the dimples to come back. Outside the window, somewhere over the East Sea, a helicopter she could not see was carrying a man she had once loved through a sky he had earned every kilometer of. Down here, in a room with 1 small bed and 1 small boy, his mother was already making a decision about whether to answer a text from a woman she had never met. She decided at 4:47. She picked up the phone. She wrote 1 word, tomorrow. Then she put the phone down, and she watched her son sleep. The tea room in Hyundai sat above a side street that smelled of pine and steamed rice. Nicole arrived 10 minutes early. She wore a camel coat over a vintage navy midi dress, leather flats, and the small gold studs her grandmother had left her. Kim Woo stayed with Catherine at the hospital. This room would not have a child in it. A waitress in a charcoal apron led her up a narrow staircase to a private alcove with a low table, 2 cushions, and a single window looking down on a courtyard with a stone lantern. Hyunju was already there. She stood when Nicole entered. 74 years old, silver hair gathered in a low coil at the nape, a soft hanbok the color of dove feathers, a thin cherrywood cane resting against her knee. She did not bow. She inclined her head exactly the way a woman inclines her head when she has spent a life being the first to read a room. "Sit, please," she said. Her English carried the patient cadence of someone who had once danced for foreign embassies. Nicole sat. The tea came in a small iron pot. Hyunju poured 2 cups. She did not speak until the steam stopped trembling. "I am the sister of his grandfather," she said. "I was in that mansion when Minyi was born. I was in that room when his mother died. I have been a witness to the CO men for 60 years. I came here today because I am tired of being the only witness." Nicole picked up her cup. She did not drink. She let the heat travel through the porcelain into the bones of her hand. "I am listening," she said. Hyunju took an envelope from inside her sleeve and placed it on the table between them. Heavy cream paper, a wax seal in the shape of the CO Hanya, broken neatly down the middle. "This is the original," she said. "Not a copy. Minyi signed the only copy 4 years ago." Nicole did not touch it. "What is it?" "It is the deed of transfer of the entire CO syndicate, in its legal and operational entirety, to the name of Kimwoo Richardson." Nicole's spine did not move. Her face did not move. Only one knuckle on her left hand went pale against the porcelain. "When?" 3 months after the night you walked out of that hall. He had it drafted the morning after he came back into that room and threw 3 documents on the floor and told my brother he would burn the throne if the child was not recognized. My brother told him to wait, to prepare it properly, to do it once and do it so the council could not undo it. 4 years. 4 years, Hyunju said. He has carried that envelope into 11 cities. He has carried it into 2 surgeries. He has carried it into the funeral of his own mentor. He has not opened it in front of anyone. He was waiting for the day he could put it down in front of you without it looking like a bribe. Nicole set the cup down. He could have brought it to my door. He could have. He did not. Why? Hyunju folded her hands in her lap. Her wrists were thin and ringed with the small bones of an old dancer. Because he knew what you would think. He knew that any gesture in the first month would look like a man buying back what he had broken. He knew that any gesture in the first year would look like a man trying to soften the council. He knew that any gesture before the child could speak would look like a man arranging a son. He decided to wait until the world forced his hand. He decided to wait until the moment when you would know, beyond any doubt, that he was not negotiating, he was paying. Nicole's mouth tightened at one corner. He paid by hiding. He paid by watching, Hyunju said. From a distance, with money, with men, with every system the CO name can buy. He has read every report. He has paid every doctor in Busan a retainer he does not need. He has paid the principal of Kimwoo's preschool twice a year through a foundation that does not exist on paper. He has not slept a full night in 4 years. "Stop!" Hyunju stopped. She reached for the iron pot and poured a second cup. The hand was steady. The pour was even, the way it had been even when she had served foreign ambassadors in rooms colder than this one. She did not push the cup at Nicole. She only set it down where Nicole could reach it without asking. Nicole looked at the window. The stone lantern in the courtyard had a chip out of its lip. A sparrow landed on the chipped place and flew away. "You think this is a love story," Nicole said. "It is not." He shouted at my son. He pointed at him. "I know. He let the council into my city. He let Catherine bleed on my wall. I know. You think this paper undoes that." "No," Hyunju said. "I think this paper is the only thing he has built in 4 years that is worth more than his pride. I am not asking you to forgive him. I am asking you to know." She slid the envelope an inch closer. "Not all the way, just enough. You did not lose a man to the mafia, my dear. He lost a son to his own cowardice. And every day since, he has woken up punishing himself for it. I know because I am the one who watches him wake up." Nicole did not answer immediately. She looked down at the wax seal. 2 halves of a tiger, cleanly broken, the broken edge catching a thin line of afternoon light from the window. She thought about the helicopter she had watched fly out over the East Sea 48 hours ago. She thought about Catherine's bandaged shoulder. She thought about the small dark blood mark on her hallway wall that the cleaner had not yet been able to lift. She thought about her son's dimples appearing in a room where 6 men had decided his color disqualified them. Nicole's hands trembled. It was the first time in 4 years. She pressed them flat against the table. She breathed in, she breathed out. What does he want? He wants one meeting, in the hall, with the council, with you in the room, with the boy in the room if you allow it. He wants to put the paper down where they signed his disinheritance. He wants you to watch him do it. And if I say no, then the paper still belongs to your son. He filed the registration 2 years ago. The transfer is irrevocable. The council can refuse to recognize him. They cannot refuse to be replaced by him. Nicole looked down at the seal, 2 halves of a tiger broken cleanly. When? 3 days. He flies back tonight if you say yes. Nicole picked up the envelope. She did not open it. She put it in the inside pocket of her coat, the one with the zipper. She stood. Tell him I will be there. Hyunju bowed her head. Thank you, my dear. Don't thank me, Nicole said. I am not doing it for him. She walked down the narrow staircase and out into the cold, and she did not stop walking until she reached the hospital, and she did not say a word to Catherine, and she sat on the edge of her son's bed, and she watched him sleep again, and only then, with no one looking, did she put her face in her hands for exactly 7 seconds. Then she stood up. Catherine, in the doorway, said nothing. The bandage on her shoulder was clean. Her eyes were not. Where are we going? She said. Seoul, the hall, 3 days. You want me there. I want you in the city, not in the room. The room is mine. Catherine nodded once and turned and walked out without another word, and that was how Nicole knew she had not misread a single thing in 4 years. The flight to Seoul took 55 minutes. Kim-woo slept on her lap the whole way. She did not read the envelope on the plane. She did not read it in the car. She did not read it in the hotel suite Minyi had paid for and that she had not asked him to pay for. She left it in the inside pocket of her coat with the zipper closed, and she did not open the zipper until the morning of the meeting. When she finally read it, in the white bathroom of the hotel, with her son brushing his teeth at the lower sink beside her, she read every page twice. The Hanja blocks at the top, the English translation below, the 4 signatures of independent witnesses, the notary seal of a firm in Hong Kong that did not have the CO name anywhere on its letterhead. She folded the deed. She put it back in the envelope. She put the envelope back in the coat. She zipped the pocket. She looked at her son in the mirror, his small face foamy with toothpaste, the dimples almost showing through the foam when he grinned at her. She did not smile back, not yet. Comb your hair, baby. Yes, Mama. 3 days later, the hall in Seoul was the same hall, same mahogany table, same red carpet, same 6 chairs and a half-moon, same 6 old men, in dark suits and dark handbox, with the smell of old paper and pine oil, and one of them, Choi Byung-ho, with the same vertical scar through the eyebrow he had 4 years ago. Old Han sat in the center, cane across his knees, white hair combed back, eyes that had read 60 years of disrespect and never blinked. The doors opened. Minyi walked in first, black suit, no tie, white shirt buttoned to the throat, the tiger on his neck almost hidden, almost not. He did not bow. Nicole walked in second, off-white midi dress, cashmere coat over her arm, hair down past her bust in body waves, jet black, the center part a clean line of light, gold studs, the small pendant her grandmother had left her, leather pumps. She did not look at the council. She looked at old Han. Kim-woo walked between them, holding his mother's hand. Beige sweater, small dark coat, white sneakers, 4 years old. He looked at the old men the way 4-year-olds look at people who do not smile. He did not look away. The council did not stand. Minyi crossed to the head of the table. He took an envelope from inside his jacket. He took a single brass key from his pocket. He set both on the mahogany in front of old Han. He spoke in Korean first, then in English, so Nicole could hear every word. The CO syndicate now belongs to Kim-woo Richardson, he said. Effective 4 years ago. Registered 2 years ago. Recognized publicly today. The accounts have already been transferred to the trust in his name. The buildings have already been deeded. The men have already been told who they answer to. He looked at each of the 6 in turn. If the color of my son offends any of you, he said, you do not belong to this empire any longer. The door is right there. Old Han closed his eyes. His knuckles tightened on the cane. For 30 years, that cane had hit the floor 3 times to open every session. He lowered it. For the first time in his life, he set it down without striking. Park Teal stood first. He adjusted the gold rim of his glasses. He buttoned his jacket. He bowed shallowly to the empty air and walked out. Choi Byung-ho stood next. The scar through his eyebrow caught the light. He did not bow. He left. Yoon Dishik stood third. He looked at Min-yi for a long second, then at Kim-woo. Then he too walked out. 3 chairs were empty. 3 remained. Lee Jin-pyo stayed seated. Jung Hyun-seok stayed seated. Old Han stayed seated. Old Han opened his eyes. He looked at the boy. "Come here, child," he said in Korean. Kim-woo looked up at his mother. Nicole did not move. Min-yi crossed the room slowly. He did not approach his son from above. He went down on one knee 3 steps in front of him like a man entering a small temple. He held out his right hand, palm up, open, empty. He did not speak. Kim-woo looked at the hand, then at his mother. Nicole tilted her head the smallest fraction. Permission. Kim-woo took a step forward. His small fingers touched his father's palm. Min-yi closed his eyes. When he opened them, he smiled. For the first time in 4 years, his mouth turned upward. The dimples that the council had once denied appeared at the corners of his face, the right one a fraction deeper than the left, the genetic mark of every CO patriarch for 9 generations. The boy saw the dimples. The boy laughed. The same dimples appeared on the small brown face under the small dark coat, right side a fraction deeper than the left. Nicole stood very still. 1 tear slid down her cheek. It did not shake her shoulders. It did not break her face. It traveled the length of her jaw and fell on the off-white silk of her dress and disappeared into a small dark mark she would never wash out. Old Han did not look away. His mouth opened once, as if to speak. Then it closed. He looked down at the cane lying flat across his knees. He picked it up with both hands and he held it the way an old man holds a relic he is no longer sure he deserves to carry. Then he set it on the table. Beside the brass key, he did not say a word. Lee Jin-pyo bowed his head toward the boy, a small bow, a complete one. Jung Hyun-seok did the same. Nicole crossed the room. She did not look at the men who had stayed. She did not look at the chairs that had emptied. She walked to her son. She rested her hand on the top of his head, the way a queen rests her hand on the head of an heir without breaking eye contact with the throne. She looked at Min-yi. She did not smile, but she did not turn her face away when he looked back at her. That was enough. For today, that was the only thing she had decided to give, and he received it the way a man receives the first drop of water after a 4-year drought. He stood up slowly. He picked up his son with both hands, the way he had handed him the deed 3 minutes earlier. He held him so the boy's small face was level with his own. "Aboji," Kim-woo said. It was the first time he had used the word. Min-yi's eyes closed again. Tighter this time. A line at the corner of each that had not been there an hour ago. He did not let the boy see it. He turned his face slightly toward the window so the light caught the tiger on his neck and not the wet at the edge of his lashes. "Yes," he said in Korean. "I am here." Nicole watched. She did not look away. 3 months later, the trees along in Sadongil were turning copper. A Saturday afternoon in October. The street smelled of roasted chestnuts and ink from the calligraphy shops. Tourists pointed at Hanji lanterns. Old men played baduk under awnings. 3 figures walked down the center of the street, hand in hand. Min-yi in a charcoal suit, no tie, the tiger on his neck visible in the open collar. Nicole in a camel cashmere coat, body wave hair loose down her back, gold studs catching the autumn light. Between them, in a beige knit sweater and a small dark coat, a 4-year-old boy with brown skin the color of warmed honey and black hair in soft natural curls. He was laughing at something his father had said. His mouth opened wide. The dimples appeared on his face for the whole street to see. A right one a fraction deeper than the left. A passing grandmother smiled. A shopkeeper looked up from a stack of paper and looked back down without comment. A child on a bicycle waved. The boy waved back with the hand that was not holding his mother's. Min-yi did not look at the people. He looked at the boy. He did not loosen his grip. He had not loosened it in 3 months. At the end of the street, where the lane opened onto a small plaza with a stone fountain, the three of them stopped. Kimwoo pointed at a vendor selling roasted chestnuts in a paper cone. Nicole nodded. Minyi walked over, paid in cash, came back, and handed the cone to his son with both hands, like a man returning something borrowed. The boy took it with both hands. He gave one chestnut to his mother. He gave one chestnut to his father. Then he kept walking between them, the small hand back in the larger hand, the dimples still on his face for anyone in the street who wanted to see them. A man who had once shouted that no blood of his could be that dark walked beside his son in the open afternoon light and let every passing stranger see exactly what blood his son carried. He had burned a throne to earn the right to walk hand in hand, and for the first time in his life, he felt like a king of something worth being king of. The camera, if there had been a camera, would have closed on the small brown face between the two coats, on the laugh, on the dimples, on the autumn light catching the right one a fraction deeper than the left, and on a mother who walked between an old world and a new street and did not look back at either. If the story stayed with you even after the screen went dark, know this, it doesn't end here. Our private community is the extension of this channel. Every story ad-free. No interruptions. No breaks in the atmosphere. Bonus scenes and extra chapters the public version doesn't show. And for the inner circle, one of our 3 tiers, one brand new exclusive full-length story every month. Plus the sensual chapters reserved only for the chair you're sitting in. 3 doors in. Scan the QR code on your screen. Tap the link in the pinned comment, or follow the link in the description below. Your name belongs on the next page. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever stood in a room where powerful people pretended your child was not theirs, knowing the truth was written on his face? Have you ever loved a man who watched you from a safe distance for years because he was too afraid to kneel in public? And if a single laugh could expose 4 generations of silence, what truth in your own family is one smile away from being seen? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about hidden bloodlines, silent fatherhood, and dignity restored, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.